In this tutorial, we're carrying on from our EQ one, but this time actually what we're going to have a look at is a focus on the drums. So I'm just going to solo these. Okay, so that just gives us an idea. So with these, it's very easy to balance these. I don't have any compression or anything on those at the moment. And what I'm going to do with this, I'm actually going to show you a little trick that what we will do is we're going to create our output. Now I'm going to hold down Option and click on Output. I'm going to go to bus 3. Once again, you'll see that that pops up over here. And I am going to make all of our drums go to bus 3. Make sure you hold down the Option when you click on this, otherwise you won't be able to select that. And over here, I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to call it Drum Group. So what this has done now is we've got a stereo auxiliary track where all of the drums are being sent to, this one here, to the drum group. What that means is that I control the volume of that drum group once I've mixed it with one fader. So here, if I turn this down, as you can see, I control all of the drums together. Now I still want to mix these before they go to this drum grouping, but it just means that we can very easily adjust the overall drum. So once we're happy with the balance over here, it's much easier to get this to focus and work in with our other instruments. So the first place to start with this, again, let's just have a listen to the bass drum. Now it's quite a thumpy bass drum is how I describe this. So what I'm going to do is always, let's start with a bit of compression on this. And what I'm actually going to do is keep a relatively quick release time. I'm just going to bring the threshold down a bit. I don't want it to compress it too much. But just enough that we're actually getting a little bit more evenness on those bass drums in there. There's a lot of bass drums. It's quite unusual to probably have this many in a row in the way that the song's played, but that's something that we can work with. So having a look at that one, I've just put a little bit of compression on. I'm just going to compare it as well with our kick front, which is the one where the microphone is by the actual beater of the kick drum. So let's put a little bit of compression on this. Just going to start with a light compression. And I've just increased the release time on that, so it just holds on to it a little bit longer. And what it's actually done is it just smooths it out a bit, so that's actually working quite nicely. Let's have a listen to the two of them together. We can really hear that this first one has a very thumpy characteristic to it, and we want to be able to tame that a little bit later on. So we're going to just keep that in mind. What you also notice in these is that you can hear the snare drum coming through, which is not unusual, and it's something that once we add this one in, it's actually going to work in our favor, having these mics picking up the same instruments. So with this first one, as I said, it's feeling a little bit thumpy. Now, what we're going to do is just be very careful. To tighten up, it usually means that we've got some low frequencies that, let's have a look where it's actually showing them. So we've got it clearly peaking around the 50 Hertz mark. This is typical for a bass drum, and that's good, but we've got quite a wide band here, which means that it's not a clearly defined kick drum. If I come and have a look at this one in comparison, actually, I need to actually put the EQ on there so we can look at it. If we look at this one in comparison, it has quite a different shape to it. It's not peaking as much in this lower region. It actually tails off much quicker than I expect to. I still feel there's more presence in here. So if we go back and have a look at this one here first of all. So for instance, let's just start with a little low pass. We're not going to do too much because we don't want to cut out too much of that sound, but we just want to get a bit of that low thump. And then we can also have a look. I'm going to grab a parametric EQ, and I'm going to, again, just narrow that bandwidth, and let's have a listen to how that affects in the bass drum. So what we can hear in that, we can hear the resonance coming through from the bass drum. It's one of the characteristics. If I sweep further, we'll be able to find more frequencies, but this one to me is standing out a little bit. So what I'm just going to have a look at, two decisions we have to make. First of all, is this a frequency that we want to include or a frequency that we want to cut? Sometimes you find that the frequency it stands out like, oh, that doesn't sound quite right, but actually that is the characteristic of that drum, and as soon as you cut it out, you lose the essence of it. So that's a decision that you have to make in this process. Okay, so it's made a subtle difference again. Always make sure that you compare with the EQ on and with it off. What we're trying to do, as I said, we're just trying to tighten up that sound a bit. Another reason that I've just sort of cut in that region there is we're thinking, well, I'm thinking ahead to our bass guitar, which features in this region here. So our bass drum kind of anchors everything around that 50 Hertz. We don't need to put any boost on that. That's already sounding quite prominent, but we want to get the balance between these two. Let's have a listen to this one now. Because it's near the front of the beater, and the same thing, put it on our high pass filter, which is going to tighten that up a bit. And what I'm actually going to look for at this end of it is just to find where there's the click of the drum. So somewhere around here, I'm not going to say that's absolutely perfect, but generally we're looking for something that's just above the vocal that gives us a bit of click on that drum. So the combination of these two and if I take these off, again, very subtle. I think we can actually make some bigger changes on that, but at the moment I just want to make sure that we don't do too much. Let's introduce our snare now. Interestingly, if we actually have a listen to that snare drum, it seems to cut out a little bit in that part. We lose a little bit and it sounds very hollow or tinny. Not sure why that is. Compression is actually sometimes a really handy tool, because if you find that you have something that is sounding quite tinny, any lower frequencies, once we apply compression, will be boosted with that. So let's have a listen to that again with compression. So with the compression, it's still not making a big difference on that part, but we can hear it making a bigger difference on the other one. Now, what I like about this one is that it's quite bright. So the snare drum itself, yes, it's missing a bit of that lower end, but it's quite a bright track. So if we have a listen to this, looking at our analyzer in the EQ, I think we can see the lower quality of the snare drum is about 200 Hertz. Once again, I'm just going to put this on, because anything below that we're not really going to require. So 200 Hertz is where the snare drum is situated. I'm just going to come back and I'm just going to give it a slight boost around that region just to help give it a bit more. And again, I'm just going to just tiny bit more and just broaden that range to capture that. And I might just bring it back a bit. So it's really noticeable when that drops out. That is the frequency that we are losing. at that point. If you do have this in any of your own mixes, I'd strongly recommend going back and either seeing if you can replace that sound. We could cut from somewhere else and put it back in, or even if you can record that again. You would have to record the whole drum part again, but it's evident that that's missing. I'm going to leave the rest of this at the moment because I feel like we've got a reasonable balance in there. Okay, so we're starting to make some comparisons. This one here, as I said, is the thumpier quality of the bass drum. I've just brought that back, and we want to keep this one here, which is the front, which is the tighter aspect. Now, overheads are going to kind of give us a bit of an idea of the room space that this exists in now. So I'm just going to play these by themselves. So the one thing with the overheads, it's going to pick up everything. It's really going to focus on, we're using this for the cymbals, and we want the brightness to come through in this. So again, I'm going to put the compressor on, and this time I'm just going to experiment with a longer release time. Again, don't want to put too much on there because I'm going to show you a little trick later on how we can really fatten up the drums using compression. So we just want to get something that's going to help us get a balance at the moment. Okay, so that gives us a nice balance. I can hear that working really well. And again, I'm not even going to worry about EQ at this stage because I'm quite happy with how that's sounding. Okay, so with this, my main concern at the moment is still the snare drum. So I'd come back to this and I'd just have a look and say, well, we probably don't want to do too much more there. So maybe what we can do instead is reduce what is happening up here so that it's not quite so bright. So the quality of this is going to change. If I solo the snare drum now. So this was as it was. And you can hear there's a distinct difference there. That in combination with our overheads. Suddenly there's more of a feature of the snare drum in this region and it's actually sitting a bit better. I'm much happier with how that snare drum's sounding now. So that's our drums, and as I said, what we can do now, we've just done a quick mix. All I'm looking at is compression and EQ at this stage. I will show you in the next video how we can use parallel compression to really fatten them up. But at this stage, we've got our drums mixed. We've got our drum grouping where we can change the overall volume, and we're setting ourselves up for the mixing of the rest of the song.